certification. Mr. Oduya.
Thank you. Just for the chairs of the group, I'm reading your patient protections, and you have a recommendation that the legislature change the prohibition on law enforcement agencies denying or revoking the right to own firearms. Am I reading that correctly? And you know, we're dealing much with these federal and state regulated programs. Cannabis is federal and state regulated, firearms, insurance, banking, all of these kinds of things. And certainly the things that Dr. Otto has been bringing up at our meetings. My question to this group is, even if we were to, for example, remove the firearms prohibition at the state level, it's really net gain zero if the federal government doesn't change their prohibition. I'll give you the example. As a state law enforcement officer, I'm required to carry a firearm. And so I cannot participate in the medical cannabis program because of the federal prohibition on cannabis. So essentially, I cannot keep my job if I get a card. So if the federal government doesn't change this, if for example, we were to change it at the state level, we'd face constitutional issues amongst those, including the supremacy clause and those sorts of things. Isn't it true in all of these issues, Terry, Nikos, the federal government has to really change their laws on this, or net gain is zero?
I think you bring up a really important point, and we felt our role was to advocate on behalf of existing medical cannabis patients. And we did find out that there is resistance by some who could benefit from cannabis therapy because they're afraid of losing registration on a firearm. They fear not being able to register a firearm. And you're absolutely correct. A lot of these issues go directly to the federal conflict that Dr. Otto speaks of quite often. But in speaking with the patients themselves, it's unfortunate because you do find that some of them will say, well, I just found out I have cancer, I'm suffering, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose my registration for my firearm, so I'm just going to go out and buy it on the street. I don't think that's the way to solve that problem. It's certainly not the ideal way to solve that problem, but there are individuals that are solving the problem in that way because they're afraid of being registered in the state's program due to the firearm prohibition. I'm not an attorney. I have no legal training whatsoever, so you may be right. It may be net zero and it may be completely dependent on the federal government, but we felt it was our duty to represent the concerns and interests of existing medical cannabis patients.